Welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophie, your pilot into the universe of Chinese. Let's continue exploring Taoism concepts in September. And I was a little bit lengthy, so because these are the essential concepts that shaped how Chinese think. And basically, it's our user menu. I'm unpacking for you. Confucianism, I talked about in August, versus Taoism, I'm going to talk about in September, are the two main pillars. Probably there's a third pillar. I just have to, search for that. On top of my mind, these are the two main thinking or worldview frameworks, how Chinese view the world. And these are close to me. I grew up in this language. I want to understand how I operate as well. So I spent a little bit more time, be a little bit worthy sometimes. So let me know if I'm getting too much. Okay, 中 is today's character. And you probably, if you know a little bit Chinese, the current China's self-addressed name is 中国. This is China. So this made into our country, nation's name, then that would be, a special word for everybody, especially nowadays, patriotism is like on the rise. And so this 中国 is even like more. I guess this concept, even if it's historically has been, and you can see how simple that is, right? How simply structured that is. And that shows how essential that is. And even if it has been permeating throughout the language, throughout our way of thinking and operating, in today's context, is even more so. Okay, 中, how it's expressed. This computerized or digitized Chinese, either simplified Chinese or traditional Chinese, have this box, have these two corners, this tiny bits of extra bits that pointing downward. Versus 2,000 years ago, this is pointing upward. So I don't know who converts that. I don't know why there is such a flipping. But this is not to my flavor. And this is almost reflecting how history by accident would evolve. Somebody, when digitizing Chinese characters, decides the two corners going downward. And I mean, that's that. Somebody randomly decided to go that way, and eventually, especially in our digitized world, and we only see this, and we thought that's how Chinese write. But no, 2,000 years ago, it's the opposite direction. In the middle, this box thing by itself means mouth. And Chinese use mouth count instead of head count to show you that mouth in Chinese concept is like boiled down to humans' individual existence. We are, if all our body parts, instead of our brain, we use mouth to signify the existence, because mouth is our eating function and speaking function. So eating is input, speaking is output. Two major functions. And on the surface, it's just the mouth. And we use that to signify one individual or person or head count. Okay. I mean, in that sense, English head count is at least staying more closer to our consciousness, which is here, not this front view thing. But I guess we have this cognitive understanding process. That's the beginning of how Chinese map out how we position this individual there. And it turned out it's not a mouth shape, even if it looks similar, almost like this dentist advertising smiley face picture of mouth. But no, this is cookware. It's a pot. Ancient times, cookware with these two handles. Therefore, it has to be on the top of it because it was handles of that pot. And eventually, this cookware was used to represent or associate it with the diners. and the diners, this eating, then eventually become our abstract mouse symbol. When we have this cookware, okay, you can see our universe centered around eating, because survival is, having enough food was a big concern back then, even if supposedly 21st century would kind of solve the majority of that. But in ancient times, when the language emerged, having enough food, dining, eating, cookware, that's, why we're here, how we survive. So we use that cookware to frame of how we want to measure things. We use that as the thing, and then we draw an abstract line to show you positionally this is right in the middle of that. And because cookware is three-dimensional and Chinese is two-dimensional, so there's this flattening of almost like we have one line down the box, just like this abstraction, and it came from that cookware symbols, and that made Chinese in two-dimensional, it will be in the middle of something. In three-dimensional, it will be in the center of something, right? So we can transit between different dimensions easily using the same character. 中, okay. 人中期中中国, okay. 中国, we talk about center of the world from Chinese self-centered perspective. And when we pair that with nation, this concept of nation with border, something can defend, then that is China, how we very self-centered viewpoint of our position in the world. I mean, it used to be in a history that China used to have the biggest capital or cosmopolitan and have the biggest, open door policy. So people come here free, come here, visit, learn, go. It was like a Tang dynasty, right? That's kind of the peak of the time when China was leading in terms of technology, cultural, how society or cities were developing back then. So I guess from that context, we can see, okay, it's probably justifiable. China used to be the center nation. All right. And now we have this global view and this like a localized individual country centric point of view, almost like outdated. All right. 人中, human center. What is that? Okay, center of human. Okay. Actually, this is one pressure point, or in 针灸, I forgot how to translate that. Acupuncture. Okay, acupuncture. Westerners probably know. It's needles puncturing through different parts of the body. So Chinese traditional medicine had the whole system of which pressure point you use this tiny needle to kind of use a small lever to reset, to help heal. So your body. So 人中 is this particular part is English. There is even a word for it. It's called a philtrum. First time I heard it, because in English nobody actually paid attention to it. But for Chinese, this particular pressure point, which is between your nose and your upper lip, and in between those two grooves, the raised part. I mean, that's an interesting structure, right? Like why human face have this structure on where almost like the center of the face have this particular, and the Chinese have a special name for that. And it's a part of language so much. Even as a little kid, I heard about it. It's an actual acupuncture pressure point. And when you don't have a needle, you just use your thumb to pressure point it. If somebody fell to the ground, lost conscious, and or somebody feel pain or something, you can just pressure point this part, and almost like you get to reset a little bit of how your nervous system kind of knotted up or tense up, or somewhere got a blockage. Pressuring this part kind of almost like restart button on our human body. And so Chinese have this part called the 人中. And in a sense, it's almost like the middle of the person, right? If we regard an individual, what an individual is our brain. The rest of it is a mechanical part, right? And then the middle part of, or the center of a human is almost like the center of a brain. And I always say like center, actually human express, Chinese express center as the nose. But this is not that far from the nose, right? So we can still say it's the human center. And this is our reset button. Okay, qi zhong. Qi is Chinese abstraction of this. And when we say this center, we're actually talking about whatever object we were talking about in the conversation. We're referring to that as this. And then 中 means in the center of that. So when something is in the center of that, that means something is inside that. And that's how Chinese express include. So when we are saying including blah, 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 including A, B, C, D, right? And Chinese would say 其中, like qi is referring to the blah, blah, blah we're talking about. And then 中 means inside of that. 有, we normally will add 有, like have. That's our Chinese include. Okay, then we have 中国. So this is, I guess, as visually expressing what is middle as possible, because this person is standing in the middle of a traffic, a road, and kind of a similar way, Chinese express it by cutting a center line through that box. And now, it's a box of food. It's our potware, and we use that as our beginning journey of cognitive recognition of the world and create this very essential concept of what it means to be middle or center. 中. Thank you for your time.